Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming to the Get On Board session. We're just waiting for Marty to join, and then we'll get started right at 1 o'clock.
There we go, I hope. Hi there. Listen, I just wondered, is there a way I can post a video? I don't know how to.
Do you have a video link, perhaps? Because you could always post the link in the chat so that people could post that. Or are you hoping to show the video during your presentation?
Show the video at the very beginning.
You could share. Yeah, you can share your screen. There's a share screen function that you should have. I think Sarah just
you can share the video by sharing screen to YouTube. No, I don't have the link. I've got it on my desktop. So can I do, we got a minute here to, maybe not work. I can do a link later, but I just thought, I was listening to the ladies at lunch. They have me reshape my time. And so my question is, what do I push here for share? Where's the, what do I do here to try to share something? I see settings, maybe. Don't want to mess things up.
I believe at the bottom of your screen where the icons are for video, audio, there's a screen little button that shows a little computer screen. You should be able to click that and share your screen. And then you can pull up the video on your screen and it should show that to the rest of us.
Let me see what happens here. Share your entire screen. Hop in to share comments. I've done that. I push share. Okay, I clicked on share my entire screen. Choose what you'd like to share.
Yeah, I still see you, not your screen.
Okay, just a second, like that. Does that? Okay, so now to get out of this and go into my desktop.
So then what you could do is probably minimize the window that you're in right now to reveal.
So click twice, is that what I do? Click twice to minimize video? Click twice?
Sure.
Or should I just minimize the whole screen?
Yeah, I would minimize the whole screen.
Okay, nervous. Here we go. Yep.
It's okay. I can let you back in.
All right. And then I see the video on my desktop.
Yeah.
So should I try
so you can
clicking it?
Yeah, you can try clicking it and then we'll just pause it. I do have a little introduction for you.
No problem. Just a second there. All right. Can you see something?
Yep, that's perfect.
All right. So is this how we should start this set? This is going to be right when you finish the intro, whatever you do. I've decided, totally revamped in 3 seconds. This is we're going to start and then I'll chat. So when this video is over, which is 2 minutes, then to get my screen again, I just want to get back to you.
Yeah. So you should be able to, you should reopen the window that you just minimized, right? So that will be at the bottom of your screen. And then you can click stop sharing screen. So the button that you click to share the screen, you would just click it again.
Okay, so just a minute. That is exit. Should I do exit full screen first?
Yep, so you can close that.
Okay, I'm not going to do it yet though, but yeah, exit the full screen. And then I should be able to, what are those 3 dots?
Sarah did just say that when the video is finished, she can take away the screen share for you, and then you'll just appear back on the screen, if that's helpful.
I think it is. Let's see how this goes now. Repeat. Okay, zoom to fill. Okay. All right. So I'm going to hold this, and that was risky, but we'll try it.
Perfect. Well, I'm glad we're all learning.
I'll say 10 words basically after you're finished to put the video in.
Perfect. That sounds great.
Okay.
Well, thank you to everyone who has come to our Get On Board presentation with Marty Deacon. I'd like to welcome everyone to the first speaker session of the afternoon. My name is Maya Kelly, and I am a former member and current coach of the Western Mustangs volleyball team. This session will last about 40 minutes. Speakers will take a break at 15 minutes to answer questions, and then they'll return to their presentation, and then we'll also conclude the presentation with a few more questions. So I really encourage everyone to use the chat function to generate conversation and to pose your questions throughout Marty's presentation. This is how you will communicate. Only presenters and moderators will have access to the audio and visual components. And please use the chat function that says session chat rather than event chat, so that we'll be able to communicate within this session. So now that the housekeeping has been taken care of, I would like to welcome all of you to Get On Board, presented by Marty Deacon. Marty is a senator of Canada representing the region of Waterloo. She was appointed to this position by the Prime Minister and Governor General in 2018, and in addition to her role, she serves on the National Finance Committee and Social Affairs, Science and Technology Committee. Previously, Marty has held various roles pertaining to education, including being a teacher, consultant, university instructor, principal, executive officer, and a superintendent. She served as an apprentice coach for both the 1994 Commonwealth Games and the 1999 Pan American Games. For the 2000 and 2004 Olympic Games, Marty stepped into the role of badminton team leader. She serves on the board of directors of the Canadian Olympic Committee and the Commonwealth Games Canada. In previous years, she has held executive board members with organizations including Badminton Canada, Pan American Sports, and the Ontario Physical and Health Education Association. Today, Marty will be talking about how to get involved with sport organization boards and what it looks like to make a difference to your team or organization. We are thrilled to welcome Senator Marty Deacon, and Marty, you now have the floor.
Thank you very much, and it's great to see you but not see you, but to be part virtually today. Really thank each one of you for being here and taking the time. What a great day, and of course to the volunteers and organizers. It's been a while in coming, but it's a thrill to be with you here today. Before I say much more, I actually decided at lunchtime when I was talking in these 3-minute interviews to totally revamp what I wanted to do in the next 40 minutes. How's that for performance on demand? So what I'm going to do is I've just pulled a video. I just want to take 2 minutes so that we can all kind of reset and think about our grassroots, our playground to podium, and just a video clip that might remind us of something that took place in this country that's very important, that connects to all of the conversations that we're having today. So just sit back and take 2 minutes first. Thank you. Ooh. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm going to come back in now.
Perfect. We can see and hear you, Marty. Can you see me?
No, I can't, but oh, there. Oh, I did a second ago. There.
Perfect. You're back and you have the floor.
Thank you, and thank you. I hope that you're able to take 2 minutes to maybe get a sense of the emotion around that video. Of course, that is a celebration of our 2010 Olympics in Vancouver. And I know that 10 years ago that many of you who are participating today were very, very young. And so it may have been sitting around a couch with parents. It may be that you're from Vancouver and you might have been in the area. But I share that video because really it represents so many things about this country and the work that we're trying to do as individuals and collectively in being a pretty incredible place to live and be active and thrive. So we have today the opportunity, of course, staying in the game was a wonderful theme, and pathways for women in sport is very intriguing and very much evolving over time. And I was invited the panel this morning and had a wonderful chance to do the 3-minute interviews solid over the lunch hour to listen to some of your dreams and some of the things that you hope to do. And so that actually helped me a little bit for some of the thinking I want to do now. One of the areas that we can pursue, you heard some examples this morning much earlier. You are mostly in university. You are in many cases varsity athletes or involved in sport. And as I understand it today, there are men and women that have been participating today, which is fantastic. And you're at a really exciting time. And it's interesting, this session is, sitting at the table or being at the board table. And I would challenge that all of you are at a really important table in your life right now. And you are setting the table for your future and the types of experiences, the relationships you're developing, your aspirations, your challenges, particularly in the last year of your life, are all pieces that are going to feed into your next steps in life. Some of you were part of the panel this morning that I did. Some of you may not have been, so I'm not sure what information you have, but I have had the opportunity to be involved in a sport at a high performance level from a young age and move into the ranks of coaching high performance athletes while being an educator. As a teacher in a high school in physics and phys ed, and as an administrator, as principal in elementary and secondary schools, and as a system leader helping lead learning for young people for about 30 or 35 years. In that piece, as you heard in the introduction, I have also had the opportunity to be involved in what we call playground to podium. So I'm equally passionate about the work at the playground level. How are we getting out, getting active, looking after our physical health, our mental health? What is our infrastructure in our communities to ensure that we have safe places to do this? That is something that is equally important to me as the athlete, the coach, the player pathway that takes our athletes and coaches to podium performances, both municipally, provincially, nationally, and internationally. And I see a strong relationship between the two of them. I was very, very fortunate at Western to be able to be part of a pilot course where I was able to pick up the initial beginning qualifications to work with high performance athletes. And that was a real tipping point or a stepping point for me. But like so many of you, when you're wondering what the next steps are going to be, I had a great experience both on and off the field of play at Western, and had hoped maybe to carry on and do my PhD. I did not. I went out into the work field and came back and received another degree in order to be able to teach later on. But in that world, in that parallel world, and I still think about getting at the table and setting the table, every experience, even the ones you're having now, has informed me or been part of a small step. And I think we're not aware of it at the time, but they have been small steps on that ladder or on that trail to the work that I have continued to do. I didn't plan all of this. I didn't have a straight plan, but I knew that I was very passionate about creating conditions for excellence. And I knew that whether it was a mother, whether I was a coach, whether I was a leader, whether I was an educator, I was very intrigued very early on the pieces it takes, the pieces of the puzzle for all of us to be our very best. And I say that because I think there's things that we hang on to and anchors we have, or things that we focus on. I really believe, and I think that started for me at a very, very young age. And when I was an athlete, I did a lot of watching other coaches, a lot of watching other athletes on the field of play, watching other families, how people interact, how they communicate, what messages we think we're giving, what messages we think we're receiving. All of these things were things that were important to me at a fairly young age. I also think I have a high level of curiosity and a high level of wonder and a high level of questioning, along with fairly significant resilience, which has been tested over time for sure. So on that pathway, and I as I say that to you, I was very fortunate to have someone in 1993. Were you born? I don't think you were born, but in 1993, I had the opportunity for someone to tap me on the shoulders and saying, you know what? I think you can up your game. I think you are ready now to take on something international. And that opportunity to have someone see that in me was pivotal. And it's something that I will say to every single one of you is you're looking up around the curve of your future, but you also need to be looking behind you. So as you're moving forward, as you're uncertain, as perhaps you're even anxious and excited about your futures, you also need to be looking behind your shoulder to see who you can be pulling around the corner with you or helping throughout the way. So those pieces became important and became immersed with me over time. My first international experience was on Canadian soil, which is also a very special thing. To be at a Commonwealth Games in Victoria in '94, to be an apprentice coach, I had myself an incredible learning on the highs, the most amazing thing in multi-sport games, and also the lows and some of the challenges. And that was the first games for me. That was also the games where Hong Kong left the Commonwealth, so there was quite a historical piece. But also, it was the first games after the freedom of Nelson Mandela, when South Africa, after apartheid, returned to a games. And so there were a number of things. That was also a games where we had people become refugees and became Canadians from games. And one of those was Daniel Galley, who went on from 1994 in Commonwealth to the 2000 to win a gold medal in wrestling in Canada. So it's called defecting. And it was all kinds of things we were experiencing. I will also say to you, when I step back, and it's a conversation we've had a lot, is that those games, medals were left on the floor because of issues in our performance and working together and understanding everyone's needs as a team on home soil. We lost medals also because of our games planning and preparation and execution and communication on site. So that was a pretty significant learning early in my games. And so that was pretty amazing. And also was giving back became part of my world. I saw these countries at the Commonwealth Games that came almost without equipment and without team jerseys and without money. And we have some Commonwealth countries that were just happy to get to Victoria. And so that is when I started a project called Canada Gives Back. and we took all of our equipment at the end of the games, we collected it, and we sent it to 4 of the countries in greatest need, and so they could carry on and have developed and established a partnership since then. Those are the kinds of things that were going all around and becoming very clear to me, that this is much more than the field of play. There are many things that I learned. And so thrilled, of course, to carry on and have other opportunities in Malaysia and China and Singapore, Indonesia, Australia, all over the world through sport, of which I am most grateful. And that was also the emerging of the power of sport. And so, and what it can be and what we can do to build communities, to understand our communities, to unite communities, which is why I showed you that video today. So fast forward, moving away from what I would call the field of play, direct coaching and team leadership, I realized that I had more I could give. And I wanted to be at the table where I could influence decision making that made the conditions the best they could be. And I come back to creating optimal conditions again. And so to do that, it's tough. It was tough in some ways. There weren't many women at the time that were taking on some roles. It was hard initially to develop that network of common support, but I did join local boards and provincial boards and progressed through to our national board. And I think I've mentioned to you, if I hadn't, I apologize. My sport is badminton, and badminton in Canada is probably something most people relate to high school and perhaps playing in some OFSA provincial championships. It is a big sport on the other side of the world. In fact, it's not uncommon to have 30, 40, 50,000 people at matches screaming at the top of their lungs. So you need to kind of picture that, and that parlayed at the Olympics and other parts of the world. And I can tell you my very first meetings internationally in 2003, I had to present something significant that we thought in North and South America was important around accountability and being strategic and spending money well. I went into my first international meeting with 150 people, and there was myself and one other female. And I didn't even didn't know that when I was speaking. It was very daunting. It's very difficult to communicate. And all of these pieces connect to my work now, my learnings now in politics, and those examples of having to be really confident, having to be well prepared, having to understand the culture that you're entering and what you really want and why you want it. All of those things were critical as I entered onto boards. At this is a fast forward. There's a lot of work in that. That's about a decade. Presently, my work right now on the board is quite connected to my work as a senator. And I wouldn't say necessarily plan that, but my work in the Canadian Olympic Committee specifically is tied to all COVID-related and pandemic-related issues preparing for Tokyo and for Beijing. And there are some very significant things that we are working on. I chair something called the Team Selection Committee for the Canadian Olympic Committee, which means my committee is responsible for approving every team, every athlete, every individual that arrives in Tokyo, how they've qualified, what's fair, all of those things over here on the one side in my sport world. And then as a senator, the last 3 or 4 years, all of these things have parlayed into my work into the Senate. Now, what is a senator? A senator, 105 in Canada, we review every ounce of legislation that comes through the House of Commons. So if a bill is any bill, private member's bill, anything, it comes through the House, it goes to the Senate, and we basically deconstruct the bill in a committee. And so it's a really interesting place to be. It's full of some political over and undertones. It is trying to trying to make the decisions on bills that work best for all Canadians, not a political party. That is the role basically in Senate. And so I equate that work with the work, if we could, with boards. They're very close. And that is my sport leadership, and my work in the Senate is about using the best communication skills I have, listening in a way that I have pushed myself, never imagined possible, frankly, building common ground, making really tough decisions, ensuring equity, inclusion, diversity is the filter at the front end of all of the bills that we're doing, and making sure we come out with something that is the best it can be, and then we send the bills back to the House. Now, if it feels like I'm jumping around a little bit, it's because I'm trying to give you a sense of the work at the board levels, and how that work has developed over many years for me through sport, and how I'm trying to take those skills and those pieces into a bit of a political environment. The testing ground, a lot of my work internationally has really helped me, because there are different cultures, different systems, different sets of rules around the world in sport, but also in life. And all of those pieces have worked to really inform me well as a senator.
Thank you so much.
I see you jumping in there, Maya, so I'm pausing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Problem at all. I don't mean to interrupt your flow of your presentation, but we'll just take a quick moment to ask a few questions mid-presentation, and then we'll get back to what you have prepared. So I do have a question from Melissa, and she says that in Canada, it seems that in our sport culture, many roles are in volunteer capacities as opposed to being compensated. Is this perception correct in your experience? Is it when you progress from minor sport to national or international level that you find these management and advocacy roles begin to receive proper compensation?
Thank you. And thank you, Melissa, for your question. It's a very important question for a number of reasons. First of all, volunteers are absolutely incredible in sport delivery, sport organization, and any part of the world right now, whatever the sector is, volunteers are starting to decline, and volunteers are extremely important. When we look at when are you compensated, when are you paid, it does really, Melissa, I have to tell you, it varies from sport to sport to sport. And so sometimes at the grassroots level, absolutely, there tends to be a volunteer, perhaps some remuneration for expenses and travel fees and hotel rooms or food, those kinds of things. And then as you move into a provincial level, those jobs are typically compensated, but we do have provincial coaches who are volunteering their time. But most is a compensation. And then as you get to the national level also. So one of the projects I've been involved with the Olympic Committee is I chaired the coaching task force. And that was a big part of our work. How do we recruit and retain the very best coaches in the world, and where should they be? Are the very best coaches in the world the ones that should be at the podium level? Are the very best coaches in the world the one that should be higher paid at the provincial level, at the municipal level, so that we have the best, fundamental movement skills, the best technical pieces, the safest sport environment at the points of entry? So and I would say to you, as part of your question, I think you said about receiving proper compensation. I have to repeat just saying, for the love of the game, sport and the choice of pursuing a field in sport will not typically get you rich. Whether you're on the field of play, whether you're working for a provincial sport organization, or you're working for a national organization, but it will be most fulfilling.
Very much, Marty. That was a wonderful answer. I'll just pose one more question, and then have you get back to your presentation. Early on in your career, were there any specific female role models that you looked up to in the sport leadership or sport board world? Or did you find yourself to be really one of the female trailblazers in many situations?
Yeah, it's a really fair question. And I think about this one a lot because there are a lot of folks, in particular your age, that have a lot of inspiring role models. And even when I went into education, folks said, "Oh, what was your favorite teacher, or who inspired you?" And I have to say, it would be more the opposite. There was one person that always made me curious, and her name was Abby Hoffman. And Abby Hoffman is still around, and she's still contributing. She was a track athlete that broke some real barriers in the 60s. And it was one person I went, I wonder what this means. I wonder what this could be. And in those early years, I would say that my inspiration was, I can't find them. There aren't many. And so we need to find and dig deep and make sure we have more women allies. And as I proceeded, of course, in the last 10 or 15 years, incredible women, varsity coaches, administrators at the universities, trailblazers, and champions of diversity and inclusion and excellence, all kinds. But what it did tell me is that if I wanted to step into that room and step into that board, I needed to be extremely prepared. I needed to do work beyond imagination and making sure that I was prepared as I could be. I needed to make sure that I was really getting to know the people in the room, what made them tick, what their backgrounds are, so I understood decision making, and how do I influence change in the best way I can. And internationally, there's even right up until now, I was a minority in so many tables, so many.
Thank you very much. I'm going to bring the floor back to you. We have 7 or 8 more minutes, and then we might end with a question or two for that 1:40 end time. Thanks very much, Marty.
Thank you. All right. So, and being on boards, and we talk about that term. What my challenge is to all of you today is getting and working along the pathway where you can influence decisions, influence change, and influence better. And in many cases, that may be being on a board. In some cases, it doesn't mean you have to be on a board. But what you don't want to do, and in my opinion, and invest your time is in a place where you have an opportunity to sit on a board, almost like token, or you feel that you've gotten to a certain level, but there really isn't the opportunity to influence. And you will know what I mean when and if those opportunities come up. You want to be able to shape, and you need to, in order to be able to shape and change and improve the future for so many, you need to be able to speak well. You need to be able to, as I said, listen well. You need to be able to understand and respect viewpoints that are so different than yours. And that has been also very, very interesting. Culturally different, emotionally different, value different, and how do you work through that? And so as I've had some tough ones. We've had to work through boards where we've had to remove people. We've had to remove people who are very, very influential. That took a little bit of courage, took a little bit of guts, but in order to create the conditions. The other thing I would say when I look at boards too is that many of you are athletes, and you may think you're retiring or stepping back, but you never really do. But one of the things on our boards is the importance of the athlete voice, and the voice, and that voice represents, ensuring that voice represents all athletes. And that will be an opportunity, I think, for some of you also. In Canada, I was able to take one of our best athletes, and he was able to get on an international board as a player rep. So very big board. Most of our meetings are in China or Malaysia. And so he was very dedicated to the athletes and representing the athletes. And it took a period of time, but probably our biggest legacy was quite early, ensuring that men and women had the same prize purse internationally in competition. And there are still some, as you've heard, sports that are a ways off from that. And I would say that we had that wrapped. It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy, but we had that in place by 2003 or 2004. But that is where the athletes had an opportunity to have a voice. Quite often with a board, you'll have a president and a vice president and a treasurer and different people with different expertise from different environments, and then you'll have committees. And I have sat on a finance committees, and that's been always very much a learning piece for understanding how an organization runs and why they run the way they run. I've sat on audit and risks for organizations are not just financial. Risks are also reputational. What are the things that we're doing that keeps us in shape to have a very positive influence in this country? I've sat on women in sport, and women in sport was really interesting because that's when the beginning of what we would call transgender athletes became an issue. And what does this mean? Who can compete? Who can't compete on the field of play? We are talking about all kinds of skills and how we bring better representation both domestically and globally on boards. And one of the things that comes out in the literature and over again is women supporting women and women being invited and wanting to be invited. There's more of an invitational piece. It tends to be, the data says that men will decide they want to be in a board, they run for a board and off they go. But tends to be that women would like an invite, and that is also a really interesting learning for me, and it's something that I continue to mentor and to support and to make sure I'm also trying to invite younger people. And the other piece that has been really critical is making sure we have the LGBTQ lens. And we in sport haven't, even Olympic Games up to about 2008, 2012, we were not really recognizing what that meant in preparation for a games and the actual life at a games and in a games village. So that was also one of the areas that I have worked in leading with the board. The other is governance and ethics. How do we shape ourselves, and what are the values that we stick to regardless in the work that we're doing? So these are all really, really important. And I just feel that the gate is opened and opening for each one of you to have tremendous opportunities in carving out, an opportunity to influence. And boy, I said to the beginning, you're at the table now. You're at the table of influence now. My first opportunity was in university. WIAC, Women's Intercollegiate Athletic Committee. That was an opportunity for me at the age of 22 or 21 to be able to be part of a group that organized, varsity sporting events, recognition for coaches and athletes, the annual athletic banquet. Those pieces were my springboard, probably for influence in sport at the university level. So that's why I come back to you and I say, you're there now. You're starting now. You're setting the table now for these opportunities. How do you best want to go about it? And if you're in London and you're staying in London, there will be opportunities in the London community, should you wish, to be able to take that first step. I do not get paid for any of my boards. I want people to understand there's not-for-profit boards and there's for-profit boards. So I have dedicated thousands upon thousands of hours. It's volunteer. Expenses are usually covered. if you have to travel to meetings, etc. But the corporate boards are different boards where you're paid a significant salary to be part of a board for a bank or something like that. But I did want to make sure that you understood the difference. And as I see, I have like 1 or 2 more minutes. Do I have 1 or 2 more minutes? Thank you very much. As I see the end coming, I also think that with all of these gray hairs and all of these experiences, I encourage you to make sure you have good supports in what you're doing and true supports. I encourage you to recognize there's a short game and a long game here. There's a long game and a short game in everything you do. Don't rush at the beginning. Just, you've got to pace yourself and recognize that patience is a critical piece. Take care of yourself. Took me a few decades to figure that out, but meditation and daily exercise and activity are a very big part of my life. That balance of trying to balance it all, do it all, is tough stuff. My biggest inspiration is my husband and my daughters. My daughters are the future, and my husband has supported me unconditionally in doing so many things that I haven't frankly dreamed possible. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marty. I know you've kind of touched on Angela's question already, but I'd love to just pose that as the last question of today's session. So Angela has asked, have you encountered any gender equity issues on the boards that you've been on? And do you have any wisdom that you can share in navigating those situations?
Yes, thank you. So the gender equity issue. So first, I'm going to say I have experienced harassment. I've experienced threats. I've experienced language that would be inappropriate in this country, not swearing, but how women might be viewed that would be very unacceptable in most of Canada. So I have experienced all of those pieces that I've been walked out of meetings in countries where by being a female in a room was just too much of a threat. So I've experienced those pieces, but I've also experienced the pieces where you're continuing to build representation for women on boards, and where you've had 1, 2, or 0, and you need to make sure it's healthier. And the wisdom and what I can share to do that is that we are matching and making sure at the front end that we find, invite, and really mentor women who have the skills that are ready to do the job. And when you can enter into a room and you can participate in a conversation, you've been well prepared, and that's our job as mentors. This will advance in ways that are much faster, frankly, than quotas, in my opinion. Angela, I wonder if that answers your question, because it's a big area right now, for sure.
Well, thank you so much, Marty, for all of the wisdom and knowledge that you shared with us today. There's so many takeaways from your presentation, but one of my key takeaways is, and what I thought was really impactful, was your sentiment of not only looking forward toward our own goals and future careers, but simultaneously looking behind us and recognizing the importance of uplifting others alongside ourselves as we look to our future careers in the sport world. As someone who has been in sports my whole life, I've benefited immensely from the community aspect of sports, as I'm sure a lot of participants here today have. So it's wonderful to hear that reminder to really lean into those sport communities and rise alongside fellow athletes, as opposed to in front of them or above them.
Yes.
And just really all rise together for women and athletes and people in general who are passionate about staying in the game after they finish their sports roles themselves. So thank you very much. I have really enjoyed this presentation, as I'm sure everyone else has. And just a reminder to everyone, as this session comes to a close, you can now exit this session and click on the next live event, which will begin at 1:50. Thanks very much, Marty.
Thank you. Merci, miigwech. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.